first for Texas voters when you can weigh in on those overseeing the cost of property taxes. And protests continue to unfold on college campuses. What Texas leaders have planned. This and more right now on Lone Star Politics.
This is Lone Star Politics from NBC5 and the Dallas Morning News.
Good Sunday morning. I'm Phil Prazan from NBC5.
And I'm Gromer, political writer with the Dallas Morning News. A giant step toward forcing the owner of one of the most popular social media apps to sell the company.
This comes after President Joe Biden signed a $95 billion national security package, including a requirement for TikTok to divest from its Chinese parent company, ByteDance, to separate it from the Chinese government. The company says it has no plans to sell, and it has threatened legal action, calling this a violation of its free speech rights. Also in the package, foreign aid funding for Ukraine as it continues to fight off a Russian invasion, to Taiwan as China becomes more aggressive in Asia, and to Israel as it fights its war with the terrorist group Hamas. There is also aid to Palestinian civilians included. But controversially for many Republicans, the package does not include more funding for border security efforts.
You know, just this year I proposed and negotiated and agreed to the strongest border security bill this country has ever seen. It was bipartisan. It should have been included in this bill. And I'm determined to get it done for the American people.
The aid package passed with bipartisan support, with the right flank of the Republican Party voting against items and the left flank of the Democratic Party voting against other items.
One supporter of the package was Congressman Jake Elzy. He's represented the 6th Congressional District of Texas, stretching across several North Texas counties, including Ellis and Navarro, along with parts of Tarrant, Dallas, and Johnson County. He serves on the House Appropriations Committee and joins us this morning. Thanks for being here.
Bill, Gromer, good to be with y'all.
Let's just start with that national security package. From the outside looking in, it appears that this was really a center-out package, as in the majority in the center kind of outvoted the edges on both the left on sometimes and the right on sometimes. Is that how you see it?
I sure do, and I think the vast majority of Americans are supportive of aid to our allies and friends. This was a victory for international order, for the forces of good and liberty over the forces of evil. And that's how I see this, and it took a long time. And in spite of what people have said and how loud they are, the majority of the American people, both Democrats and Republicans, are in favor of some sort of aid. And it took us a little while, but we had to find our footing after we elected a new speaker, after 8 Republicans voted with all Democrats to kick out our previous speaker. We found our footing. Mike Johnson is on a good path now, and I think he's standing about 6 feet taller than he used to, and 20 pounds lighter.
Now, I feel like there's some legitimate criticism for folks who have maybe served or family members who've served who said, you know, they saw Afghanistan, they served in Afghanistan, they served in Iraq, and they say, we don't want to go close to anything that even smells like expanding a conflict. What do you say to those folks?
Well, I served in Iraq and Afghanistan in the ground, on the ground and in the air, and what my goal is, as a combat veteran who's lost friends in combat and to the terrors afterwards, to suicide. The last thing I want is boots on the ground in Europe if Article 5 gets invoked. That's why it's so important that we help Ukraine fight their own battle to preserve their own country and aid them any way we can. The return on investment for the amount of weaponry we're sending, and that is a key point because I keep hearing people saying we're sending them money. The money is going to U.S. industry to outfit them with the weapons that they need.
Because they're building the weapons.
To preserve, we're building the weapons, we're shipping them over there. There has never been an aid package that has had more oversight than the last one, and we're adding to that this time. Now keep in mind, our adversaries are watching. 3 of the 4 adversaries we have right now, Iran, Russia, China, and North Korea, are all in a state of war. 3 of them are in a state of war. Remember, North Korea is still a state of war. That is a ceasefire only. The only one that's watching is China. So they're waiting to see if we let Russia take Ukraine, they go to Poland, Article 5 gets invoked, or if they go to the Baltic states, Article 5 gets invoked, the Americans are forced to enter a war in Europe, and that leaves China to do whatever they want to in Taiwan. This is a geopolitical issue.
Are you worried about threats from your Republican colleagues, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, of trying to oust a speaker, remove the speaker based on the vote?
No, because everybody knows what the polling is saying, both within the Republican Party and with the nation as a whole, that we are supportive of that aid package, and I don't think there is a lot of support for a motion to vacate. And with President Trump, often silence is consent. And you'll note that she didn't do a privileged motion. So when it's privileged, it goes outside the rules of the speaker and it has to come to the floor. She didn't do a privileged motion. In fact, once this came up, the president defended Speaker Johnson, and I'm sure behind the scenes says, let's hold off on that a little bit.
Last week, the speaker was here for a fundraiser. I don't know if he gave you a shout out. I don't know if you were there or not. But should border security measures or funding have been tied to the bill? Because that's what a lot of Republicans wanted.
This is the border is not an issue of funding. It is conflating the two when people are saying we're sending money to Ukraine, we need to send it to the border. The border is adequately funded. This is an executive issue. The laws didn't change from President Trump to President Biden. The willingness to execute the laws did. Now here's something I just want everybody to consider. I believe that we are at war with the cartels. They are killing 200 Americans every day with chemicals from China. Chemical warfare, weapons of mass destruction, age 18 to 49, the #1 killer. That is how an enemy like China, who is interested in total warfare, unrestricted warfare, can come after us, defeat our military, and defeat our economy with fentanyl products that are coming across the border, controlled by the cartels, not to mention the illegal immigration and human trafficking. So if they're killing 200 Americans every day, they're at war with us. We need to recognize that that's the state of war exists.
We'll follow up on that before we go to another issue. But so there are some who say that we need to be more aggressive with the cartels and maybe even take some action against their bases in Mexico. Is that something that you would support?
I have been supportive of Dan Crenshaw's authorization of use of military force. He was a SEAL. I have served with the SEALs. I think we've got some special forces that could adequately take care of that problem. AMLO, the president of Mexico, needs to cooperate with us. The president could stop 70% of this problem, certainly on the immigration side, with a remain in Mexico. But the chemical weapons coming up through with fentanyl, controlled by the cartels, that becomes a proxy war from China. Everything China does has the approval of Xi Jinping. So we need to recognize that they're killing Americans 200 a day. 300 a day through drugs and fentanyl, which hasn't been seen since World War II, losing 305 a day.
Let's go to an issue that will impact your district if it happens. But recently, Amtrak has taken over what used to be Texas Central. They're working on an agreement, but Amtrak has told us, and we've covered it on Lone Star Politics, that they are now driving this project. A high-speed train between Dallas and Houston, it would run right through your district. Is that something that you would support?
Absolutely not. Never have since I've been running for office starting in 2014. I have said that that is the one project that I will undoubtedly take
Fight
care
in Congress to stop it.
But here's something else. No Texas Central exists. And Amtrak got hoodwinked into giving a $500,000 grant to do a study on this to a company that doesn't exist, doesn't have a board of directors, and is operating on behalf of a foreign government, which falls under FARA, foreign agent requirements. And they haven't done that. And there was a group that sent a letter, and I mentioned it in a hearing with the Attorney General last week. And I think it caught him off guard. This project's never going to happen. And Amtrak kind of got out over their skis on this, and we will be conducting oversight on how they came to do business with a company that's representing a foreign government.
All right. Eminent domain, concerned about that at all? But you just say it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
All right.
Congressman Jake Elzy, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks for being with us. A lot of fun.
Dramatic scenes continue to play out on college campuses, including here in Texas, over the war in Gaza. Coming up, how key action from Texas leaders could impact what many consider to be a form of free speech. Plus this.
The people that pick those people, the taxpayer is going to get to pick them on May the 4th. So choose wisely.
For the first time, Texas voters will elect members of an appraisal district boards. What's at stake for property owners? Next on Lone Star Politics.
This Saturday is the May 4th election. Bond proposals, mayor and city council races across North Texas are on the line, along with a brand new elected position, Appraisal Board of Governors. They will be the bosses for local appraisal review boards, and while the issue on the ballot may not be on your radar yet, you should know there's a lot at stake.
Here's NBC 5 response reporter Deanna Zoga with what it means for your property tax.
Every spring, property owners across North Texas receive notice about the proposed value from their local appraisal district. Placing a value on your home is the first step in determining what you'll pay in property taxes later this year. If you disagree with the value, you can protest and go before an appraisal review board, or ARB. Now, for the first time, voters are asked to pick some of the people overseeing the ARB.
The people that pick those people, the taxpayer is going to get to pick them on May the 4th. So choose wisely. Texas State Senator Paul Betancourt told NBC5 last week the publicly elected directors would offer voter input in how an appraisal district is governed. The change is mandated under property tax reforms passed last year. It impacts appraisal districts in counties with populations of 75,000 or more, expanding the appraisal district's board of directors, typically 5 appointed individuals, by adding 3 publicly elected positions. The tax assessor also becomes a voting member.
The board of directors, their main job is to pass the budget, to elect the chief appraiser, and then to install any policies and procedures that would govern the appraisal district.
The Collin Central Appraisal District's deputy chief appraiser explained in Collin County, 3 people were running for 3 board places unopposed, so voters won't see the question on their May 4th ballot. Sample ballots show voters in Dallas, Denton, and Tarrant appraisal districts will see candidates on the May 4th ballot.
I think at the taxpayer level that we won't see very many changes to the protest process. But we hope that there will be a voice of the people that sort of inform the executives at the appraisal district and the board of what's going on.
Property tax consultant Will Wiggins explains the board of directors doesn't appraise your property or set your value, though it would oversee the people that do. Deanna Zoga, NBC5 Response.
The seats for the board of directors are nonpartisan, but Gromer, this is such a technical position. Do you think people will notice even?
They won't notice, but there's one of the problems I hear is there's so much on the ballot in Texas, so many elections, so many people to vote for, that there's a lot of confusion. So I think the worry here is that this will be another election with elected officials that no one knows anything about. They're confused about what they do, and it could lead to apathy.
And there was an argument in the legislature that kind of goes to the question of, do we really need more politics in our process?
Well, exactly. That's also a question. And it's such a technical issue. Yeah, we'll see.
One other important appraisal mention is for Tarrant County taxpayers. The Tarrant Appraisal District is extending the protest deadline to May 24th. Also, the business personal property rendition penalty is waived if you received it by May 15th. So this comes after a ransomware attack. However, staff at TAD says the current website version has not been compromised. We have more information online at NBCDFW.com. And also online, we have a guide to the May 4th local elections. To get directly to it, just scan the code right there on your screen. The Israel-Hamas war protests on college campuses fueling the free speech debate. Still ahead, we take a look at the actions of Texas leaders and the efforts to keep students safe. Student protests over the Israeli-Hamas war continued on college campuses here in Texas and across the United States. Some colleges already announced the cancellation of in-person graduation ceremonies. Now, even before protests erupted this week, state leaders were scrutinizing Texas universities when it comes to free speech. In March, Governor Abbott ordered college leaders to review their policies and report to the state within 90 days. He specifically mentioned the 2 pro-Palestinian groups that organized the protests at UT Austin. There were others at UT Arlington and the University of North Texas.
I was walking around the protest with an Israeli flag yesterday, being called a Nazi.
Kudos to Governor Abbott for really doing a great job to stop this anti-Semitism. Of course I think there's anti-Semitism. They're saying it to our faces, they're putting it on signs.
Most of the pro-Palestinian people I've ever talked to, all of them I've ever talked to, do not condone killing of any sort.
I don't like the people saying that this is anti-Semitic because it's not. There's nothing to do with religion here. It's just about supporting humans.
It is possible to disagree and disagree strongly, as I certainly do, with the right-wing Netanyahu government and its policies without being anti-Semitic.
Incumbent office holders usually are in trouble when there's a sense of chaos. Will these protests put Biden in a tough situation?
It just depends on the intensity of the protest, and where and the timing of it. The election is November. You got the Democratic Party convention in Chicago. Everybody has now images of the 1968 convention and all the chaos there. If it's a similar scene, then yeah, that could be impactful and hurt the sitting president. But it just all depends on what the mood is there. But chaos is never a good thing for people in power.
Now let's jump to the November 5th general election and the top of the race, specifically in Texas. It's only April.
But the candidates are out for the race for U.S. Senate.
Congressman Colin Allred, a Democrat from Dallas, is challenging Republican Senator Ted Cruz's effort for a third term. Now, Cruz was in North Texas this week to campaign for fellow Republicans down ballot. We heard his stump speech in Decatur and Fort Worth.
Well, they're looking at this idiocy in Washington, and they're saying enough is enough. Look, even the Democrats saying this nonsense don't believe it. Listen, we've got now Democrats that can't figure out what is a woman. That didn't used to be a trick question. For all of recorded history, you could go back to the cavemen. Say, sir, do you know what a woman is? Yep, sure do. And these numbskulls, they know they're lying. Joe Biden knows what a woman is. I can prove it to you. He only sniffs the hair of girls. Never once have we seen Joe Biden come up to Chuck Schumer and start sniffing his hair. And you know what? I am even more certain Bill Clinton knows what a woman is. But when we see this nonsense, it opens people's eyes. It opened people's eyes, and I'll tell you, Texas has a responsibility to lead.
I also don't see myself just as a Democrat. And what I mean by that is I'm asking Texans to understand and to get to know me. As somebody who, was born and raised in Dallas by a single mom, was a public school teacher who grew up the hard way, going to our public schools, not having, enough to get by, swiping our debit card when we were in the grocery store line and saying a little prayer and sometimes having to put something back because we couldn't afford everything we needed. That's the way I grew up here in Texas. I'm a fourth generation Texan. My family's from Brownsville. I went to school in Waco. I know who we are as Texans, and we are not who Ted Cruz says we are. We're not as divided as he makes us out to be. We need to have a leader who tries to bring us together around our shared values as Texans and who understands those values. And I don't think he does. So that's the choice that's going to be in front of Texans in this election. Is somebody who's been a bridge builder versus someone who tries to burn down those bridges. We are doing this because we want every Texas kid to have a senator who cares about their future. And I genuinely believe that Ted Cruz only cares about his future, his political future, what helps him, what gets him the most attention. He has been somebody who's not been a serious lawmaker trying to help us here in this state. And so I will be the exact opposite.
So, Gromer, the Cruz campaign put out an ad saying, reaching at the Democrats, saying that he's bipartisan too, so to speak. His stump speech was a lot of culture war stuff, transgender issues, and also he did focus a lot on the protests happening in UT Austin. Can he make that sell that he's a bipartisan senator while kind of leaning into the culture war as well?
That will be tough based on his history as well. Look, he's going to try to reach out as a bipartisan candidate because his opponent is doing so, and we have so much gridlock in the country, that you're going to have that talking point. But at the end of the day, he believes that if he turns out his conservative base in Texas, that he will win. So how do you turn out that conservative base? You give him that red meat, which he gave him in that speech.
And he is going to be out there working very hard. I mean, that's one thing we say about Senator Cruz, is he's going to be everywhere.
He's a good campaigner, and so is Ulrich. So, yeah.
That's all the time we have. Stay tuned for Meet the Press with Kristen Welker.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you back here next week for more Lone Star Politics.